Hello and welcome to That One Idea, a podcast series chronicling early stage founder journeys brought to you by WaterBridge Ventures. Through this podcast series, we hope to bring out the founder moments and journeys that led them to starting up. We highlight the humans behind the founders as they blitz through their 0 to 1 journeys and transition their ideas into scale worthy businesses. These conversations reveal the unique spirit and the talent of these incredible founders as they share the vision of who they are and what they're building. In this episode, we have Anjali Sosale, partner at WaterBridge, chatting with Rajiv Kumaar, CEO of Adster, and Ketan Chandak, CPO of Adster. Adster focuses on helping mobile app and web publishers monetize better through hyperscaling their revenue from ads. With over 2 decades of experience in building ad tech platforms, the Adster founding team has a unique understanding of challenges faced by publishers. Rajiv has previously worked in product management roles across Vizury, Truecaller, Daily Hunt, and Melora, and has also served as the product and tech head for ads at Truecaller. Ketan has gained extensive experience across data engineering during his stint at Truecaller, in addition to software and ML experience at Twitter in the search and home timeline engineering teams.
Great. Rajiv and Ketan, good morning. Welcome to our little podcast studio here at WaterBridge. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This is going to be season 3 of our podcast series called That One Idea. So welcome.
Thank you, Anjali. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So as you know, we're kicking off season 3 with the Adster podcast. You are amongst our newest investments. So very excited to announce this to our founder and VC community and to unravel your journey up to starting. I think when we first started That One Idea as a podcast series 2 years ago, for us it was really what's the backstory to starting up? How did you literally come to that one idea called Adster in this case? And how do founding teams come together and why do they build what they're building? So on that note, let me maybe start with you, Rajiv. Always love to ask people where they were born and raised. Tell us about key milestones, events, or even people, personalities that influenced you growing up.
I was born and brought up in a place called Shakti Nagar in UP, closer to Banaras. So dad was working in NTPC, and that's the first project of National Thermal Power Corporation called Shakti Nagar. From being born to 9th class, I was there, and then he got transferred to Visakhapatnam. So that's where I lived. Then did my engineering, and then that's where I got placed with Wipro, and then came to Bangalore. And then since then, Bangalore has been kind of home for last 14, 15 years now. But one I remember back when I was trying to do college and all, E. Sridharan was one of my legend person to look to. Like the way he launched Delhi Metro, and then also somehow I used to look up at him in terms of how he butchered the entire bureaucracy and was able to do some of those things, right? And obviously there have been tons of influence even otherwise.
Yeah. Ketan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I was born and brought up in Hooghly. It's like a district just on the outskirts of Kolkata. So you can say almost in Kolkata. So I used to travel to Kolkata every day for schooling. I studied in Don Bosco, Kolkata. When it comes to influence, one of the key people who influenced was people who taught me privately at home. So I was always a pretty bad student when it came to getting grades. I used to get very low grades until class 7, 8. And then I remember in class 9, one of my private tutors taught me how to approach everything in general, including problem solving. So that's when I got hooked to maths, and then things followed one after the science, computer science, and then that's where I decided, okay, I want to possibly try to be a software engineer. Then I studied hard for 11, 12 as every engineering student in India does, and then went to BITS Pilani. So I took up the two things I love the most, maths and computer science. And I graduated in 2018, and after 2018, so Truecaller was the first stint I have. So in BITS, you have like a 6-month internship program that everyone has to do. So Truecaller was part of that, and that's where I met Rajiv, and then the whole Adster story started.
Yeah, so I know you went maybe from day zero, you were in the ad tech space, like fresh out of college always. Rajiv has had a more diverse and eclectic journey, but take us through being you amongst the first 10 employees at Vizury.
I still remember, I think it was November 2nd, 2010. When I landed from Kolkata to Bangalore, and then I visited this 2 BHK home in JP Nagar. And our founder came out receiving me. So that's the earliest memory of. And then I entered, and how we are operating in a 2 BHK today. It was the same thing back then, right? And then I think 10th or 11th employee.
I'm guessing that's how you're greeting your new employees today.
So post MBA, I was with Cognizant for 6 odd months, realized it was not my cup of tea. and somehow Vizury happened back then, right? And that was my entry into the adtech world, which continues even today, right? And I think Vizury for me even today is the Bible of all my learnings, both from a professional angle in terms of got exposed to entire business development, sales and account management, India, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Poland.
Take us to the problems that you were solving for like a full decade and a half ago at Vizury.
So back then, AdTech was all of Google and plain basic targeting, right? Which is you want to run an ad, there's some sort of targeting and all of that. What Vizury introduced to the world was, and probably it was the first or the second company globally, I think first was Criteo, right? Is this concept of retargeting, which is if you are on, let's say, back then clients like Make My Trip or a Clear Trip, right? You are on them searching for a certain specific route and flight, and you drop off, you don't complete your transaction. So Vizury as a platform, we are able to identify those users in terms of as an anonymous, what did you do? And then once you were out of their ecosystem on a world wide web, like reading an article on Yahoo, doing something on Facebook, we were able to map you anonymously, and on a real time basis, we were able to show you basis your past behavior a similar relevant ad. And that kind of consciously kept generating thoughts in the user's mind that okay, I was intending to do something, and then they click on that ad, come back on, let's say, Clear Trip, does a full transaction, and the entire funnel was closed. So this is what we pioneered, at least in India and some parts of Asia. At some point, I think we were running ads in almost close to 30 countries, offices in 10 countries globally, and we were competing with likes of Criteo, even Google. At some point, acknowledged presence of Vizury in terms of what we are doing in terms of the tech that we built. We solved the specific use case within ads of retargeting, right? Generating more recollection of brands within the consumer's mind space, and that generated great results, and we were successful all that while.
And Ketan, if I can come back to you with Truecaller, this was about 7 years ago now, roughly, when you first started at Truecaller. Same question in terms of take us through the early days, the big problems that you were solving with monetization. There you literally had to create the playbook for monetizing via ads. But take us through your time at Truecaller and the problems in ad tech you were solving.
When I started at Truecaller, so at that time I was in a different team. So there was a central AI/ML team that we had at Truecaller. So it was not just ads. I was essentially responsible for handling data pipelines, etc., for a bunch of different business units. So it included search, ads also, and a bunch of other things. So when you're right out of college, you've never seen production systems at that scale, and Truecaller was growing at an insane pace. I remember when we joined, Truecaller's DAO MAU numbers were around 50-70 million, but within 2 years they hit 200 million plus DAO MAUs. I could actually see the things that I worked on where from day zero we thought about scale, that okay, in 2 years we'll hit this scale, so we need to build at that scale, think about that scale. That is one learning I had even before, let's say, I started deep diving into the ad tech domain. But a year and a half into my Truecaller journey is when essentially I got relocated to a ads business unit, and that's when Rajiv came in. He started heading that ads business unit, and then we started looking at ads from a product perspective and not like a horizontal level. And then essentially we thought about what are the things we can do, starting from the client to the backend to the data platform, which we can use to optimize the entire ads experience of a user on Truecaller. So I remember there have been meetings where there are 10 people in a room, starting from Android engineers, iOS engineers, from backend engineers, Rajiv there, me there, data scientists there, and all of us are all both looking at the Android code, trying to debug what went wrong and what can we do to improve, and also looking at backend code, data pipelines, all of us. So we were like one team and only one aim in mind: how do we increase our revenues or add more revenue channels as much as we can.
And I know beyond the two of you, we have Girish and Ranga, and that's the 4-member founding team here. And you've worked extensively with Ranga back at Vizury. So we'd love to just spend a quick 2 minutes on the two of them and give us their backgrounds and segue into how the four of you came together.
So I am the connecting link between, let's say, all the four of us as a founder. So Ranga was my colleague in Vizury between 2014 to 2016. And I think I'm one of the lucky guys who could be a friends with Ranga without being a techie, right? So that's the respect I could command from him, simply because I was able to sometimes speak in his language, which is what techies appreciate typically. And so those 2 years we formed a great relationship in terms of working culture and all that we built. And since then it was always in our mind that we'll work together, we will do something, right? But somehow I moved into another role outside of Vizury, and then he tried doing something of his own. And that's when he met one of his friend Girish, and they started something. And then I started consulting them. And Girish was the CEO of their startup called Planetworks. And then COVID hit, and they kind of had to shut the shop. And that's when I kind of moved out of Truecaller in 2021, and I was in like, okay, let's do something again, right? So which is where Ketan and I started building. But it was always in my mind that I wanted to involve Ranga and then Girish because of the skills that he brings, right, in a complementary way.
Yeah.
So while Ketan and I started the journey, it was always there in the back of my mind that at some point when we see things moving forward, right, I will bring them in. Like after, let's say, the first prototype that was built by Ketan and myself on a do-it-yourself or a self-serve platform that we call today, that's when we kind of bounced these ideas to both Ranga and Girish, and they were excited to come over.
And Ketan, since you're from Twitter, I'm going to ask you now, since we are talking about Adster, if you had to describe Adster in a tweet, how would you describe it? Like a one-line, one-sentence description.
Yeah. So I would say Adster is a company that helps businesses grow or their revenues or hyperscale their revenues. No matter you're an app or a website, whatever your place will help you increase your ad revenues.
Yeah, and just a little more into now what the market you're building for and why you chose to start now. I think all of you, of course, have high opportunity costs as professionals in the ecosystem, but what gave you the confidence to start in these last few months? And tell us about how the overall ad tech market has changed, like big inflection points that you believe will support you on this hyperscale journey of your own.
The only thing which people kind of correlate with ad tech is Google and Facebook
Yeah.
at this point of time, right? But it is so much more, right? Both from an advertiser perspective, where they are trying to spend tons of money to acquire users, build a brand, and on the other side is publishers with whom we are working, where how can we help them make more money. The journey has been evolving since early 2000 when the ad tech origination, let's say, happened, or late 90s basically, right? So the inflection point that we have, at least in my career, seen like 2013 was the mobile inflection point. 2018-19 would be largely in India, if I were to say, because of Geo, right? And then availability of internet across the population and cheaper internet, video kind of took an upswing, right? So streaming, online entertainment, so that kind of created a lot more content tabs and all of that happened, right? And then now what we are seeing is the connected, the digital out of home that is happening. And with all this inflection, what is happening is the ecosystem is becoming more and more complex, right? And the kind of skill set that is needed to be able to solve for that is very hard and challenging, right? And the kind of talent pool that is available today is limited, right? Been wanting to do something in this space from, I would say, since Vizury days. Like even today, I can say that there's no open source or no ad server in the world which has inbuilt retargeting capability, right? So Vizury as a startup had solved this in 2012, 2013. And even today, no publishers can achieve retargeting on their own. So when I keep looking at use cases like this, what we also realize is we continued learning, right? Because there are three significant parts to this whole ecosystem. Like I said, one is advertiser, one is publisher, and one is the tech platform. So Viji was the tech platform where I got some learning. Daily Hunt, Truecaller was the publisher side. And then a small stint at Melora gave me a advertising outlook in terms of advertiser. So once this three pieces was complete for me, that's when I realized, okay, this is the time to start now, although it was 10 years late since I've been wanting to do. But with the picture being complete, for me, understanding that what are the challenges a marketer goes through, to the publisher's angle of Truecaller and Daily Hunt that we saw, and the platform capability, is when we thought this is the right time now to solve for starting with publishers first. And then obviously we have grand scheme plans in the next couple of years where we would start mapping some of our products for advertiser side portfolio and then look at other tech platforms as well.
And Ketan, given that you said earlier that you were looking at it from a product point of view while you were building for this at Truecaller, just help us understand why you believe this can be productized. Most publishers, maybe even listening to this podcast, would feel like ad tech monetization, at least programmatic monetization, is simply an integration with Google or Meta. But help us understand why it's beyond that, why mediation is possible, and why and how you were even able to productize it at Truecaller.
I would say 80-90% of the internet runs and is powered by ads. So if you're using a product that is not charging you a subscription, then you are the product in some sense. and what the ads you see from the publisher is helping them keep the lights on the product. So ads, even though most publishers don't probably spend a lot of bandwidth and time on, is an integral part of their business because it actually brings the money in.
Yeah.
The problem here, which we figured, is that since most publishers are focused on user growth and their core product experience and offering, they don't spend a lot of time optimizing what they can do on the ads revenue side of the things. So most publishers would just integrate an ad mob with Google and switch on the revenue side and then don't optimize any more on it. So the whole ad tech ecosystem is pretty complex.
Yeah.
There are 10 moving parts, 10 players each on the publisher side, supply side,
Yeah.
demand side, and there are 10 things you can do even on your app or your website to help increase the revenue by even, let's say, 2x, 3x. That is where we come in. Since we have this domain expertise and since at Truecaller we build this in and out the entire piece, starting from what you can do at the ad server level, what you can do at the data management platform level, what you can do on the client level. So we have built this expertise across various domains within AdTech, and that is where we come up with those products which you can just treat it as a black box, integrate with us, and then help increase your revenues.
And here we're talking both programmatic as well as DIY or self-serve if you want to also build your direct ads business.
Yeah.
If you could just spend, maybe Rajiv and both of you could spend a little bit on both aspects or both parts of the product that you're building, and also, typically in a publisher's journey, at what point do they seek which product?
A publisher can end up making money by either direct sales, which is, let's say, if you have large enough, and typically from a direct sales capability, you have to have at least 80 to 100 million impressions a day that you should be generating from your app or a property. And that's when you kind of are slightly large enough for you to be able to do direct sales, reach out to direct advertisers like Dream11, Nestle's, Britannia's of the world. But if you're not that big and you are still generating inventory and you want to monetize, so essentially what you're doing is you are leasing out your space to platforms like Google, Meta, where they have their own properties like YouTube or Instagrams of the world, and so they have advertisers already on board. So they have extended their tech platform to other publishers, wherein these publishers or apps like Truecaller, etc., can plug onto their ecosystem and directly tap into their advertisers, right? So largely, these are the two ways of making money, right? Now, the way journey starts is obviously any app or a property or a web property. When it starts, obviously you start with like just an idea, right? Then you get thousands of users, 10,000, right? But when you want to start making money, you obviously look at the programmatic way, because that platforms like Google, Facebook, let's say Amazon today, they're solving for the world where due to their ecosystem, they have advertisers in play. So you just plug them in and you start making some money, and which is what we call programmatic revenues. And then once you start hitting 30, 40 million impressions, that's when you start strategizing in terms of how do you take your own brand to the market in terms of direct sales. Look at maybe one or two folks to add on the sales side, and then the journey continues, right? And then once you reach a certain limit, that's when you start looking at optimizing, right? And which is where the space starts getting complicated, and that's when you need to have a full-fledged ad tech team, right? In terms of solving for this at scale, right? So this is what the journey looks like, and this is where we as a team, like Ketan mentioned, right? Like the part that we built a Truecaller from grounds up, it kind of gave us a window that a publisher at any step and a size is going to struggle with all of these,
Yeah.
right? And so we have built a 360-degree solution to the entire ads from a publisher's perspective at this point of time, right? We are not replacing anyone. We are not replacing Google. We are not replacing Meta. And that is one big challenge that we've seen with the industry is nobody really understood publishers' problem once the complexity started arriving, right? So they all thought that, okay, I can become a Google. I'll get my own demand. I'll replace Google, right? I'll replace Meta. Plug me in. I can give you more demand. But when we sat within Daily Hunt, when we sat within Truecaller, we saw that there's the space between the app and the network, right? That whole optimization that needs to happen. This is what we fixed for within these apps, right? And then we saw revenue scaling by 2x to 6x. And this is the space that we're now trying to own, which we see it as a greenfield space. And so while the solutions are being innovated, but they're still innovating on the network side, but we are trying to own the space where we come before and we solve and simplify things for publishers.
And the reason you think that has changed in the last decade that you've been in ad tech, where the publisher problem statement has become more pronounced, and because, like you said, of just the complexities that the networks are bringing, would you attribute that more to literally each of these demand generating SSPs are all, I always call them wall gardens, amongst them, between themselves. They never open up and collaborate with each other. Amazon, Meta, Google all work independently. Everybody's trying to build their own ads ecosystem and network, and publishers therefore are finding it hard to integrate among and with multiple of these, right? So do you feel that the reason the time is now is because of the ever increasing complexity and the way in which the behemoths are turning out to be, and also because of the kind of experience that publishers want to give their customers, in a sense that not everyone may want to do only programmatic. You might also want to build out your own offline BD teams and build out the whole direct advertising bucket as well. But take us to, typically when you speak to large publishers, and I know you're very US focused because that's where you'll get the type of impressions and DAUs that we were speaking about. Typically, what are the top problem statements that you're hearing from them?
Okay, let me give you one real call example that we did just 3 days back. One large football magazine app.
Yeah.
So they have close to 7 million daily active users, 5 million Android, 2 million iOS, right? 2013 originated. So they're profitable. They're roughly doing $400,000 a month, but zero ad tech team, right? They started something on AdMob, which is one of Google's product. They're making money. Then Meta came. They implemented Meta. They were doing something. Then somebody came and told them, why don't you use Google Ad Manager, right? They tried doing something. They were not able to configure it properly. All of that happened. And they're back to AdMob, right? And then so now if you look at it, decently large, 10-year-old startup, pure content within the football community, but they just don't know where to move forward, right? One of their use cases, what they also wanted to do is being able to show like a Nike ad to a Manchester United fan in London or maybe globally, right? How do you enable that, right? So while there are products and parts who can help you solve that, which is let's say like the Google Ad Manager, which is the server, but even implementing that and the support that these apps get from Google or a Meta is insanely nightmare, right? Meta response is all automated. You probably won't even hear back from them in like months. This complexity is ever evolving, and then this is the use case, right? That with the while being lean and while they want to focus on their core, which is the footballing content app, how can they continue growing, right? And what this founder shared with us is while their DAOs having doubled in last 1.5 years, their revenue is flat, right? And if you look at Google Meta's revenue quarterly reports, they are ever increasing, which means there's a platform because they've carteled this whole ecosystem, and we all love Google and Facebook, no doubt about it. But they are making more and more money, and publishers are making more and more less money. And on the other side, advertisers are finding it hard to generate ROI for their own ad spends. This is where we want to come and solve for publishers, which is first let us solve for them to make more money from this ecosystem, and then we look at other parts of the ecosystem.
And you spoke of the programmatic ecosystem here, and if I talk about the direct piece, maybe the same customer example or maybe even another one, what would it take for a customer like this to set up their own direct ads piece, just in terms of team, more importantly talent and expertise? And what scale do you think would be the right scale for somebody to start direct? And obviously I want to counter that with versus just plugging into the Adster DIY platform. What I just want to contrast the difference and the ease with which they can plug into Adster, and literally from day zero the type of revenue they can start generating.
So like I said, this is where when we built this 360 solution, right? We are working with the existing ecosystem, but at the same time providing all the requisite ecosystems as they graduate from each step, right? From like 100,000 DAO to a 500,000 DAO to a million DAO, right? So the way we are looking at, like any typical publishers at this stage would be starting with AdMob, and without behind AdMob they might be configuring Meta and trying to make some money, right? Which is where one we have seen the revenues are suboptimal, because like I said, the way I've configured definitely is not the right way. And after having talking to close to 10 odd publishers, some of them who have become our client now, we see this being a perennial problem, right? So where we are coming in is with this stack, we are first helping them having optimized revenue from this piece of programmatic, then start adding more partners, right? Because on your own, if you were to scout for more programmatic partners, one, it is very difficult to find who are the right partners for you in each geo. And two, integrating them again needs a sizable tech team and a product team and all, right? Which just becomes a nightmare in approach, and then a BD team to build relationships and all of that. So that's the second part. And then what we're giving them as a capability is, while they can use obviously something like a Google Ad Manager, but that's an enterprise product and you need to be at a certain scale. But before you do that, through our direct capability, including the DIY, you can start testing markets, right? So through this solution itself, they can go online with direct sales in a self-serve way. They can start seeing that are they getting results. And let's say there are multi-geo apps like Football Magazine app in this case, where their impressions are coming from close to 30 odd countries at a significant number. So if they start seeing registrations happening from local advertisers, those are the markets they can identify. Like in this case, for this player, US, UK are the top two geos. Then you start identifying, okay, I need to have at least one person as feet on the street model, right? And then start identifying what agencies. And then as they further grow, maybe they can continue using our solutions, or they can maybe look at Google Ad Manager to complement us, right? And our stack still adopts these solutions and ensures that everything works perfectly and you make the most optimized revenue.
Interesting. And we spoke about like programmatic ideally being the starting point if you're a large app, and then you naturally progress to setting up your own teams. Just a little bit more, if you don't mind, Rajiv, on what's the revenue split, like at scale publishers, maybe some of the larger publishers that you've worked with, typically what's the revenue split between programmatic and direct at scale, of course? Yeah,
Sure. I mean, obviously,
I know it's publisher's choice, but largely, how do you see it planning out? Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you start with 100% programmatic.
Yeah.
And at a good scale and an optimized way, you should be able to reach 50 to 50, right? And then the true destiny that you can achieve for your own self is at least 80% direct, right? Which means you are less dependent on programmatic partners and you're able to generate premium for yourself, right? So that's the journey ideally should be, right? So the challenging, like, for us startups, we talk about 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100. Even for publishers in this context is you can reach like 30 to 40% direct, right? But that's when they start stagnating, right? And that 40% to 80% journey is something like, let's say Twitter. I'm sure when they started, they also had lower numbers. Google was always there, right? But what is it that can you do to make your direct heavier? And which is where it's not just about sales team, it's about the art and the capability that needs to lie in the platform, right? And again, taking my experience of Daily Hunt and Truecaller, the way we look at the three aspects to solving for the direct piece, right? One is the kind of engaging users you have, which means also reflective of your content. Are they spending time on your app, right? Are they engaging with the content and all of that, right? So that's one important critical, so that you have enough impressions and engaging impressions. Two is the kind of data that you are generating, right? Now everybody talks about Google and Facebook, but let's give it to them. They understand a user pattern across their different properties, which sums up your entire online user behavior, right? So what more can these apps or properties do to capture this data and at scale, right? Which is where what we did along with Ketan at Truecaller, right? And third is the tech platform, where you have to have your own capability for your direct play to play out. You need your own stack. You can't do it on Google Ad Manager. It's a brilliant product, but if you're just trying to do brand campaigns, right, which is diminishing day by day, right? So if you want to be able to innovate on CTVs, you want to be able to run more performance campaigns, you, let's say, at some point you want to plug in into digital out of home campaigns and all of that, you need your own capability, right? Which is where the standard enterprise products don't offer, right? And these are the use cases that we are solving within our platform. But probably Ketan can give a couple of examples from his days at Twitter and Truecaller, right? The scale that we are looking at, the kind of computation we need to do. And it's very important that you have to be able to generate a user's footprint from your own property. And that takes a lot of effort and intelligence.
And as we move to Ketan, I also want to segue into the elephant in the room, which is attribution. I think whenever you talk about ads, and since you're saying that ideal point you want to be is 80% direct, or at least get to 50 and then to 80% direct, a key part is building trust with your advertisers, because they're directly now giving you the dollars, and therefore the entire attribution piece. One is being able to serve new formats and contextualize and personalize ads. The other part is just ROI on the dollar spent, right? So take us to some of the use cases that you're building for at Adster, maybe some of the best practices that you've seen at Truecaller that you're learning from and bringing in here. But keen to understand how you're solving for that. So a large part of the success of your direct product will also be on your ability to drive, the whole analytics, reporting, and attribution to advertisers.
Sure. So AdZ is what we call our direct DIY platform. So one, we have always kept the customer, the advertiser, in mind while building out this platform. And also, when the publisher is, let's say, a new publisher is trying to onboard, we have kept it so simple that they can just create an entire white label DIY platform on their own without even talking to us. So it's like 100% automated. So just think about Shopify, but for like the ads platform. For the advertiser side, we have integrated generative AI to help advertisers build better looking creatives, build better looking headlines, better looking CTAs. Also built our own Adster AI, which we have fine tuned to basically blurt out better creatives, better headlines, which we have directly integrated to AdSeas.
Just to add, so this is our own training data, right? So this is what we're trying to do within the AI. So we have verticalized, obviously the LLMs are the available LLMs and models, but we are creating our own training data, which will then help advertisers just give a theme, or if they have an app or a website, just give that URL and it will seamlessly give basically the better performing ads that is there in our training data, more relevant ads.
And where do you get this training data from, if you ask, is where our entire data piece comes in. So we have built a platform which can very reliably capture all the impressions, clicks, attributions, pushbacks, installs, lead management platform. Everything has been very well integrated into this entire data pipeline. And that's where we build this long-term intelligence that you're talking about. So eventually you want to get to a point where the publisher is just integrating to us, and we throw much more relevant ads according to their user persona, their user base, with real-time retargeting and all the other pieces that we have. So, and we are using again that data to train these AI models and then building this.
So what would, as an advertiser, if I can just simplify this, as an advertiser working with addies, what kind of reports can they expect vis-a-vis just say not having AdSeas or just working directly with the publisher? And if I can even ask you to contrast that with what they'll get if they were on GAM or Meta. From an advertiser perspective, how are you making the reporting and analytics better for them?
So I think at this point of time, publisher will get a lot more value. When they look at GAM or the solutions that are plugged in. I mean, there are reports, but after having a conversation with multiple publishers, they still don't understand their funnel data. They're reliant on these products in terms of whatever output they give, right? So they say 100,000 impressions, is that the true number, right? What was the actual opportunity? If you look at our 360-degree product portfolio, AdSeas is one product. We have 4 more products. So start from an SDK journey, state of the art SDK that we have built. And like I said, this is the SDK which orchestrates the entire programmatic piece. From the time of app open, it starts logging every relevant data from an ads perspective in terms of app open, ad request, ad response, when the frame was initiated, an actual impression that was served to a click, right? And then the post back data in terms of what happened after the click, if the partners are sharing their user level data with us, right? And this will kind of enlighten the publishers to understand truly what is the opportunity that they're missing today, right? And which is where then, basis this feedback, we have built capabilities like offline ads and all of that, right? Which means that a user might be in a subway or they might be in a lift, and because of the poor internet connectivity, you might not have been able to show an impression, right? Or today a lot of cached news pages are coming up, right? So which means there is no net at that point of time in a cache page. So can I show an ad? So those are the additional capabilities that we have built in our platform just to ensure that 100% of the opportunity has to be catered to. Now, once this happens, right, automatically the benefit of that is the advertiser, right? Because what advertiser expect is the transparency. The 2 numbers which I think for the education of all, right? One is first the marketing level ROI, right? So let's say I've sold a product of $100 and my gross margin is 20%, which means if I sell a product, I'll make $20 for my own self, right? So from the marketing money that I spent, I should be able to cover this entire cost at the product level, right? And then comes is the absolute P&L level, which is people cost, business cost, and all of that, right? And that is when if when we worked at Amazon back in 2015 as part of Vizury, this is how without being infringing on their strategy, the way they approach is their ROAS, which is return on ad spend. They start with like something like 1 to 1.5, which is just cover the cost of the product, right? And then slowly over years they keep working with you. 1.5 will become 2 to 2.5, 3, till the time they hit a P&L level profitability. This is where marketing becomes an important channel then. Otherwise, till then it is a bleeding platform. So for this to happen, publishers have to be empowered first, right? And So post the standard metric, like in terms of where it was shown, impression, clicks, and then if obviously advertisers are able to share the install level data or order level data, then plug that in and show that. But beyond that, right, the idea is to bring publishers and advertisers closely to our platform, and then be able to give more interesting data around long-term impact of this. Right now, one of the things that we've clearly seen in some of the clients that we have worked in past and currently as well, what you're seeing is direct performance campaigns have an effect on organic, right? Which means you will see automatically organic traffic being burned up, leads or sales being happening, right? But the moment you reduce your spend, that number goes down, right? Now again, both these teams work in silos, right? So which is where the idea is to be able to plug both of it in, and also show that constructively how a performance campaign is also linking to the organic effects and all of that as well. So automatically the advertisers will also start benefiting from more of this, and as long as the ROS gets generated, I think that will solve the problem for everyone else.
And take us through your ideal customer pitch. Like, just take us through some of the early to what it takes for a client to sign up with you. Like, ideally, what are the problem statements you're listening from them, and what's the ideal pitch for them? Like, how much of this we spoke about, how you're not replacing anybody, so you're not asking them to switch out of any existing ad tech stack. But I think that's an important piece for people to understand. So take us through the value prop for a publisher and why we're not really replacing, but we're truly coming as a middle layer to optimize.
So our ideal ICP today is an app or a web property having between 500,000 to a 10 million daily active user, which is why I said this is the space that they need to outgrow to move towards an enterprise in their journey, right? And so it's very important that they continue focusing on their core solutioning, which is app or the content, whatever it is. And but they need revenues to grow, and unless you are a commerce level app, obviously ads is going to be 80 to 90% of your revenue unless subscription can kick in, right? After talking to more than 10 to 15 such ICPs in last quarter, clearly one problem statement is they don't have the right team, right? I mean, within the horizontal engineering team, maybe one or two are people are working on the ads integration, maybe one or an ad ops or a product guy dabbling together, right? And at least understanding of what exactly is happening, like I said, between the app and the network, right? Post ND and all of that, with all the confidentiality that they've been able to share their numbers. And when we see this journey exactly being when I started my journey at Daily and Truecaller of, let's say, 2019 in Truecaller, the numbers that were there, and fast forward when we fixed some of those things, what those numbers move to, and we clearly see there is a gap, right, from the numbers that we have looked at to, and which is where we have been able to convince some of them to come on board, and that our solution will be able to start generating results, and it has started to for some of them, right? So this is the problem statement: not enough know-how of how to achieve the efficient revenues which will help them scale up. And if you go a level deeper, which is what is our part of pitch to them, is if you were to start hiring and trying to do it on your own, you're talking about significant investments, at least a team of 7 to 8, including engineering, product, and more ad ops, to be able to do that. That's even at their scale of 500,000 to 5 million now, you're talking about an investment of at least $500,000 a year kind of spend, which is a lot. Their overall revenue might just be in that or a lesser range, right? So how can they achieve that, right? And even if they were able to set up a team, let's say they raise money and all, the outcome is going to take at least a year or more, right? So the opportunity cost of that year itself is so high, right? Which is where our solution comes in. It's pure plug and play. Obviously there is some solutioning in the early part just to understand how they've set it up and all of that, their app. And this is where we also consult with them as part of this product, is in terms of what more ad units can they create, how can they make their ad units better and more relevant from a consumer perspective. But post that, it's the complete platform play for them, right? Just plug and play and let the magic happen.
Understood. And just want to segue into, as you're building out Adster and like now you're moving beyond the founding team with the fundraise closed as well, take us through ideally how you're building and structuring the org. Like I said before, you have extensive experience professionally, so keen to understand the, I would say, learnings or the culture from earlier large employer brands that you've worked with that you're imbibing into Adster. But how are you looking to set up and build the org beyond the 4 of you at Adster?
So I can answer from the product and engineering perspective. Obviously, we think of all the products top down. We are building multiple products which cater to a different life cycle of the publisher ecosystem. But then also we are trying to build a suite so that they talk to each other properly, and then we build a very enticing offering to any publisher. When it comes to essentially engineering culture, hiring, etc., so my only philosophy is essentially what we are trying to solve is difficult problems. We're trying to build low latency systems at billions of scale. So that is one of my things to like get engineers on board with me, because this is a very difficult challenge to solve. And what I always focus on is building a product as fast as possible is obviously important, but what we should also focus on is building things of the highest quality. If there are POCs or MVPs that we can build with no code, minimal effort, first do that rather than going out and like spending a month to do something. Be heavy on documentation so that you are not blocking anyone if your lets are not available. Which is something which I learned at Twitter, was that I was part of a team which was across 6 to 7 geographical locations, but I was never blocked by anything because the documentation culture was extensive there. So anything I wanted to know, I could just go out, check the internal wiki, not be blocked by anyone, and then get on with my work. That is what I want to also inculcate at Adster. And secondly, when it comes to hiring, apart from all the technical stuff, deep technical stuff that we are working on, which is obviously pretty challenging, the other is being able to sell your vision to people, because you can always, the money game is essentially someone will obviously pay them higher and get it, but you can, if you can sell that vision and get on board people who are actually hungry enough to essentially build something worthwhile, then you can always.
And you have this powerhouse of a co-founder called Ranga, and I think the two of you form a brilliant tech and product team. So give us a sneak peek into the product pipeline. We're in the beginning of 24, so what can we expect in terms of tech and product? What's keeping you busy these days, and what's coming out next?
Sure.
What are you focusing on, your tech and product priorities here?
So me and Ranga operate in parallel. So we are not exactly in silos. Where we do essentially do design meetings and everything on some of the stuff. But from a product perspective, Ranga is focusing more on the SDK infra and architecture side of things. And I am focusing more on the backend data ML AI side of things. So when it comes to products that we are thinking of, so our SDK, which essentially the version 1 of the SDK, we have already built it out, is essentially
be hard at this point of time to put it.
So that will be out and ready to be plugged into the market early 24. And from essentially, so it does all the complex things that we discussed in the last 40-50 minutes: mediation, calling multiple partners, client level. And also what from the backend side, what we have done is we have built our own ad server. So all the redirect campaigns, ads that we talked about, and all the
logging of data, full funnel flow,
demand partners. So all of that has been integrated into a one big single ad server product that we have. Adster X is what we call it. And the SDK is seamlessly integrated with Adster X also. So essentially, this entire piece product offering is what we're launching soon.
And Rajiv, what's our culture mean to you, and how are you looking to build out the team?
The only way, I think, our first set of members, right, that we have is all through personal reference.
Of course, always.
So almost all the team is through mine or Ranga's network, or that we have worked with in past. We know we are comfortable with, right? The only external one has been, so Ranga and I were having a cup of tea at one of those locations, and somebody overheard us and offered to do a freelancing work with us.
Are you serious?
That person worked with us for next 6 months, right? And we obviously during the journey liked him, offered him, and then very recently he came.
Wow,
that's working with us full time.
That's serendipity. Nice.
Having worked with Vizury, Daily Hunt, Truecaller, all of them have been great, outstanding institutions on their own. But obviously, from an outside-in perspective, I've seen a lot of learnings, and those are the ones we are trying to rectify. I think this is where I'll take Zerodha's example, right? I mean, that's another guy who has inspired a lot of us, not from being a bootstrap perspective, which we are not, but the way Nathan Kamar talks about his early set of employees, and that runs in thousands, not like 10, 20s. So that's an inspiring thought process, right? That at least when we look at it, that your first 30, 40 team has to be there with you, right? And if they're not, then it means we as the founders or us as a company are doing something wrong, right? And And I think all of us know it's not always about money, right?
Yeah.
Like I can take my example from Ketan. So at some point, Ketan was about to leave Truecaller just when I joined, right? And he thanks me today but we've been able to retain him, and I'm sure it was not because of money, because what we offered was less than what he was getting. But I think he liked us as a team, he liked us as a people, and the vision that we have. So those are some of the learnings that I had from my past successes. By retaining Ketan, I understand, okay, so this works, right? What we're building is truly outstanding in terms of what we're trying to achieve within an ad tech community. Like I said, without cannibalizing or trying to compete with Google and Facebook, we are enabling an ecosystem in a more easy to do manner. And we're sure as we continue to grow and more of such ICPs and we work with larger publishers, we are literally talking about billions of ad request capability in a day, right? At a user level, defining their entire journey and making it more productive for apps. So we're building something unique. So the culture is simple, right? I mean, high on ownership, great on intent. We always believe skills can be taught. That's the same philosophy we always live to. But ownership, I think, is something which can't be taught. So that's one thing that we are looking at, and which is where at this stage it's very difficult to judge an ownership, right? So the team is coming out of reference because we know that these are the people who have worked with in past. So maybe next couple of hires will again be in similar thing, but we started taking interviews and all of that. And the idea is to get people, let them get exposed to the things that we are building, and hopefully things should fall in place.
No, on that note, the last question really is what's going to keep you excited and busy for the rest of the year? What are the big audacious goals you've set for yourself for 2024?
One audacious goal, what Ketan just mentioned, right, is rolling out the entire suite of products. And maybe I can use this platform as an announcement on behalf of Girish that we are participating in AdTech 2024 at Gurgaon event in March. I think 15th or 16th is the event. So that's our showcase or a demo platform where we hope whoever publisher community that we meet, we should be able to give them a preview of the entire product suite and how it can handle, right? So that's the first exciting milestone for us. And now that we publicly said with Anjali, who's our investors, there is no way of going
need to
back.
make that happen.
We need to make that happen, right? And the whole of next year is cracking the US market, right? So like I said, we had a first good call very recently with this European play, and it hit all the right notes, right? The founder was there, and he happened to find us on one of those ad tech communities. Great call. Amazing to see that without even talking about India and anything, we just closed the call. Next half an hour, he shares the entire revenue report, right? We said we'll send a note and all that, but he sent it across. So then from there on, I mean, from product and tech perspective, obviously is to keep fine tuning and improving from version 1 to version 2, version 3, make the product more efficient. But from a business perspective, it's all about reaching out to more and more our ICPs across US and Europe, right? And start converting them into our successful clients.
Awesome. I think on that note, a big thank you once again. All the very best. Very, very excited to be partnering with both of you, and of course also Girish and Ranga. It's a brilliantly eclectic founding team and super excited. All the very best once again, and thank you for joining us here.
Pleasure is ours, Anjali. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. High fives.
Thank you for listening to That One Idea, a podcast series produced by WaterBridge Ventures and recorded at our studio office in Bangalore. WaterBridge Ventures is a leading early-stage VC fund in India, partnering with mission-oriented founders building game-changing businesses. The fund invests up to $3 million across seed to Series A rounds. With over 35 investments in 6 years, WaterBridge has backed leading companies like Magic Pin, An Academy, Iloilo, Chalo, and City Mall, amongst many others. With over $250 million in assets under management, WaterBridge also runs India's leading seed investment program called Fast Forward. The Fast Forward program invests up to $1 million in seed stage companies with a 7-day turnaround time to all founder pitches. Head over to waterbridge.vc to learn more.